Hi everyone, I'm very excited to say that I am excited to talk to you all about Black Mirror Season 7. So today's video, I am going to rank from best to worst these episodes of Black Mirror Season 7. I'm going to go in depth on my thoughts, analysis, what I liked, what I didn't like. But the big thing here, and the reason I'm so excited, is because early seasons of Black Mirror, pretty much everyone agrees, were incredible, flawless. Everyone loves them. Everyone really likes how just kind of like locked in they were. You got 3 episodes a year and they were just really focused on the money, just incredible short movies, basically. Like episodes like Entire History of You, Be Right Back, even the one with the guy and the pig were all just great. Even Waldo Experiment. I hear a lot of people rag on that one. I quite like the Waldo Experiment, all right? I do. Hot take. Put your pitchforks away. But after Netflix purchased Black Mirror, there kind of everyone seems to universally agree the show did go down in quality a bit. Now, what I will say was the benefit of Netflix buying Black Mirror or getting the rights to Black Mirror is they kept Charlie Brooker, so there was still a lot of that creative energy there, that creative vision that he had in those early seasons. But two, you got kind of accessible Black Mirror. Episodes like Nosedive simultaneously still had the DNA of those early seasons of Black Mirror, but somehow also kind of worked as this like nice midpoint, you know? It wasn't as off-putting as like Guy fucks a pig, but at the same time, it pushed people's sensibilities enough to feel like kind of dangerous television, you know? To me, it felt like kind of when there was The Office US. Yes, it's a bit more accessible, but it still is kind of a good high quality, you know? It doesn't take a shit over the UK office. On top of that, even though we got a bunch of American episodes, you still got British episodes that still felt as dark and bleak as those early seasons. I think where, however, Black Mirror starts to have its downfall were these kind of in between episodes you got. Some of them were British, some of them American, but it was these episodes that kind of tried to go for the like big, bold, dark ending, but either the concept itself wasn't that interesting or the execution itself wasn't that interesting. I think the worst thing a Black Mirror episode can be is forgettable. And episodes like Hated by the Nation or Playtest, in my opinion, or Archangel deal with ideas that have been explored in other Black Mirror episodes better, or the ending just doesn't come all together that well. And it's clearly going for the big, like, quick play Radiohead, this is going to break people's brains moment of like shut up and dance, but it doesn't. You know, these endings kind of ring hollow. And even an episode like Smithereens in season 5 that had a great setup, great performances, like a really interesting, just tight little hostage setup, ended in a way that felt like a wet fart. And those are the worst Black Mirror episodes. And as the Netflix seasons progressed, we got more and more wet fart episodes, in my opinion. Culminating in last year's season 6, I turned on Joan is Awful. I made it 20 minutes. I messaged my friend and said, I am finding this unbearable. Does this season get better? And he said, honestly, man, most people I've talked to, this is their favorite. So I never finished season 6. I had too much on my plate. I had too much going on in my personal life at the time. Never finished it. And I kind of went, maybe that's the end of Black Mirror, you know? As the seasons have gone on, we kind of got more and more bad episodes. Jack and Ashley 2 was a notable terrible episode that I am yet to meet anyone that likes it, but you still cling to hope, you know. Occasionally you get episodes like San Junipero or Shut Up and Dance, like I mentioned, that bring you back. Even USS Callister was an example of a non-super dark, gritty Black Mirror British episode that had just a really cool science fiction concept that was a fun ride to go on. But yeah, as the seasons came out, you got less and less to chew on. So then season 7 drops. And, you know, I've got a channel that's doing quite well. I try and keep up with what's popular. I go, all right, let's give it another go. Let's see. I was fully expecting a bunch of wet fart episodes, and I am so happy to report that pretty much every episode here is bare minimum like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. In fact, only one is debatably a 6. I think these are all really solid. Great concepts, great ideas, great performances, pretty good execution. The execution here ranges from incredible premise and incredible execution to incredible premise and could have been better but not bad. And in my opinion, this late in the game to have 6 episodes that are all solid at the very least is a wonderful achievement. So spoiler-free thoughts. If you haven't seen any of these and are curious and know what Black Mirror is about, actually just go watch this season. Watch it in order too. I think it starts off great. Just go check it out. I think you should go in like I did, knowing absolutely nothing. To talk about it anymore, in my opinion, does the show a disservice. I don't think you should know anything. So let's just get into ranking all these episodes from best to worst, in my opinion. So there's going to be some hot takes, but hear me out on these ones. Let me explain myself, all right? Here we go. First off, best. This probably isn't a hot take, common people. And I know it's disappointing that the first episode of the season starts off this great, but this season doesn't really drop that hard, in my opinion. I thought the first episode, Common People, was wonderful. I thought this was like peak Black Mirror. It's back to dark, gritty, awful storytelling in the best way possible. So the setup here is basically, what if people were a subscription service? What if your health was a subscription service? All right. And it sounds like a meme of Black Mirror, but the execution here is what brings it home. So basically, Rashida Jones's character, there's a couple played by Chris O'Dowd, I want to say his name, and I want to say his name is, and Rashida Jones, they're a couple. She has like a brain injury and she's either going to die or she can get this little like brain surgery done where they put like a robotic element or a technological element in her brain. And to keep that going, to keep her alive, basically, you need to pay a subscription fee. And the subscription fee is $300 a month, which in America, and given the kind of like economic climate they set up in this episode, it is clear that's a lot of money, all right? And the money figure, by the way, people that complain that it's not that much, isn't entirely the point. It's just the fact that you have to pay that much each month for the rest of your life if you want your wife to stay alive. I think where this episode goes really interesting, where it gets really interesting, is the fact that they start running ads through the wife, all right? And I love how it's initially revealed. I love the way they initially reveal this. Just like conversation, she goes like, have you tried espresso whatever coffee? And just the way it comes out, you clue onto it. You're like, that sounded a bit strange. And I almost wish they stretched out the subtle advertisement a bit more initially. I thought initially she was going to be this like little secret agent that just starts slyly suggesting getting the coffee. But no, very quickly the ads kind of unfold and develop into full on like, buy now for $9.99. This peaks in a moment where they're trying to have sex, and mid-sex she goes like, this type of lube is the best type of lube, blah, 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 blah. So all of this being said, I thought the actual storytelling here was what brought this home. The social commentary itself was almost pushing it. It was almost too on the nose. The scenes that they're having with the person that sells the subscription service, tries to get them to upgrade to Rivermind Plus and all of this stuff, almost felt a bit too on the nose for me. It was getting into a little bit of the kind of obvious American episodes. But what saved it was every time we went back to the couple, seeing how grounded and awful and realistic this was. This was a bleak story to watch unfold. And what was hard is there was genuine love and yearning between the main couple, Rashida Jones and Chris O'Dowd. They cared about each other. He cared about her so much. I've seen people being like, why didn't she go work a job? Why didn't she do this? Because she needs to sleep to like help the servers process or whatever all the time. So she literally can't. And it was just awful. Obviously they start hiking up the prices and they add new features. And I thought the way this technology was executed was just so fascinating. And it almost lost me again when they set up the Riverside, I think it was Riverside Lux. They set up Riverside Lux, which is now this thing where like the chip they have allows them to be better than normal people, and like you can get like matrix level skills, like just become really good at XYZ. I thought it was going to go down the route of she could like somehow rewire her brain or her biology to have a child or whatever, because they're having difficulties having a child. They didn't go down that route, but yeah, it almost lost me here because it was so on the nose. But the thing that brought it home was how grounded and brutal the kind of, watching this domestic bliss fall apart, watching how they were craving the subscriptions or the opportunity to experience Riverside Lux just for a bit. It was just really, really well done. It was really, really well done. And I thought the ending was perfect. I thought taking it this far, getting this dark in the first episode of season 7, but inevitably it leads to this situation where Chris O'Dowd starts going online and kind of torturing himself for people's amusement, essentially doing like chatterbait, but for torture. And it gets to this point where at the end, they're like running low on money. They're selling their baby crib. Great storytelling, by the way. Selling their baby crib to people that are just going to set it on fire. You see Chris O'Dowd smile. He's missing a tooth. He's putting himself through it. They've lost their jobs. It's bleak. It's bleak. And he decides that they both mutually decide that it's better for her to be put down because she doesn't want to live her life as essentially an advertisement. Obviously, at this point, the advertisements are going to be way more intense, way more full on. And look, I'm not spelling out anything thematically here that you guys have missed, all right? Like the ending of him choking her with a pillow and the Lux timer runs out and now she's, spouting advertisements while dying instead of saying babe no please or anything like that, just spouting advertisements is horrific. This is like peak Black Mirror, and it's what brought it home. Even though those moments where they're in the office felt a little too on the nose, it was contrasted so well with how awful and bleak these episodes were. And I think what was nice was like this was a nice couple. Black Mirror is normally very bleak in its storytelling, but this felt like a love story that was actually torn apart and almost salvaged. And I think it asks the question, would you do this? If you were Chris O'Dowd or if you were Rashida Jones and you knew this is how it was going to go, would it be worth getting a couple more months from your wife, from your husband? Could you deal with a version of them that occasionally said an advertisement? Because personally, part of me thinks maybe I could, but like obviously clearly the way subscription services operate in this episode and in real life, they would just turn the dial up until you're like, I have no choice but to spend what is now $600 on Riverside Common or Riverside Plus or whatever. I also loved that the title comes back Common People and they become Riverside Common, not Riverside Plus. It was all good. And on top of that, like very reflective of how subscription services work and the healthcare system, but I don't need to spell that out to you. It's very clear what the social commentary is. I just thought the human elements here, this relationship where this guy desperately wants to be able to uphold a tradition they share together, watching his wife, who usually cares about this stuff, not being able to have a memory, like it was perfect. It was a great episode of Black Mirror. Also, I talked about the end of Rashida Jones's character, but Chris O'Dowd, it is implied that he takes his own life at the end of the episode. Now, I've seen some people not take it as this. I took, like, they very much clearly show that he's going in with a box cutter, which, imply that imagery implies it already. But on top of that, I found it interesting that if you have that read that he is taking his own life, the fact that he's kind of like going back to give the people what they want. He has no reason to keep doing this. He has no reason to do it on camera. It almost feels like this that was really bleak to me. Like this idea that he's like, yeah, I've lost my wife. I'll just give these fuckers what they want. Maybe they'll have a moment where they look at themselves. And truthfully, my next two are pretty much tied. All right. If I had to rank it, it would be the order I'm going. But honestly, my top three are pretty much tied because this one is bleak and horrific and awful. Awful stuff. But then we get to Bete Noir, and this shit feels like an incredible A24 movie. I loved it. Now, I'm going to ride or die this episode. So this is technically ranking number 2. Bete Noir. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I thought this episode had the sauce. All right. I also thought the contrast in tone and vibe was excellent. And also, I think it's important to note the first episode was an American episode, like set in America, but had a really like kind of the early British Black Mirror feel with its bleakness and desperation. And episode 2 is set in Britain, is very British, but in saying that, it more has that American glossy vibe. I thought the presentation here felt like the substance with like the title cards and the really high res, high contrast color grading. So that was awesome because I love the substance. And the substance, by the way, if you haven't seen it, feels like a great Black Mirror episode. Also Severance. Quick side note, I love that the creator of Black Mirror has said he can't watch Severance because people come up to him and go, yeah, you should watch Severance. It's like good Black Mirror. Poor guy. But regardless, let's talk about Bete Noir. I thought this fucking ripped. I loved this. So first off, once the plot kicks in, once you realize this woman is being gaslit seemingly by this kind of person seemingly by this person she bullied growing up, and is getting like full on gaslit in a way where she's not just getting like gaslit, like the world is changing what she said, what she did. She'll write emails and the email will not be what, and we'll see the initial email she wrote. So basically, sorry, I'm going all over the place. The setup here is essentially that a woman works at a company, right? Our main character works at a company, and then another woman who she knows from childhood starts working at the company. Her name is Verity, all right? And our main character sees Verity and goes, oh my God, this is this weird girl from high school. And initially, seemingly is kind of a bully towards Verity. And throughout this episode, there's this vibe of kind of gaslighting and things going wrong. She starts saying things that we saw were true earlier in the episode, and they're not true anymore. For example, she sends an email and the email is incorrect, even though we saw her write the email. She gets a name wrong of a company that her partner used to work for, and we saw it, and then it changes. By the way, quick side note, the whole thing between whether it was Barney's or Bernie's, apparently there are two versions of the episode that they have given out on Netflix, so that gaslighting is even happening to the audience. But it's just so interesting, and where it gets really dark and heavy psychologically is she'll go home and be like, hey, I said the company you used to work for was Barney's, but everyone at work was saying it was Bernie's, and then I Googled it and it was Bernie's, but I know your hat says Barney's, and then the hat says Bernie's. And then the boyfriend is like, no, babe, like I worked at Bernie's. Like, what are you talking about? So it's really well done in terms of how it visually communicates this existential gaslighting she's going for is great. And you also get a really good sense of who she is as a person. I feel like our main character was a nasty piece of work. She was not a good, nice person. So as the episode unfolds, I was glad with this being a kind of... Has anyone seen The Ring? You know the movie The Ring where you've got 7 days before this curse takes you? Later on in the episode, right, they set up this idea that one of her ex-friends, our main character's ex-friends, was driven nuts by this gaslighting and took her own life. And I was fully prepared for this episode just to be a horrific example of that cycle. What I was really enjoying was this idea that we're going to see everything from her perspective, see that she's right, but also see how everyone doesn't believe her. And she's going to be convinced. She's going to be like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to self-delete. I'm not going to take myself out of this world the way other people have. And you watch her inevitably do that somehow. I could not wait. I thought that's where it was going. It doesn't go that direction. Yes, I would have preferred it, but the direction it goes is also fucking sick. All right. So first off, few things to clarify about this episode. Yes, technically Verity is the villain of the piece. She is gaslighting. We find out that she has this necklace, right, that she talks into and essentially kind of changes the reality that we were running in. It's to do with like this quantum device or whatever, this big device she has in her house that she's built that essentially allows her to bend reality to her will. They give a very scientific explanation about how it's like kind of switching realities or making people... It doesn't really matter. The idea is she's essentially changing the world to gaslight this girl, all right? Gaslight our main character. And the reason I say it doesn't matter is because this is an example of Black Mirror having a technology, putting it in the episode to tell a really compelling story, and then it kind of works so well that it doesn't really matter. You're not sitting there scratching your head as to why it works. You get it. She talks into the necklace and fucks things up and changes things according to what she wants. She bends will to her existence. So this woman breaks into her house, sees that she's been an astronaut, sees that Verity has done all these insane things because of the power of the necklace, and then it goes full camp, all right? She somehow steals the necklace and now she can control the cops that were after her and tell them that they work for her. She then creates herself as a god of the entire world. And yes, this does feel very rushed. It does feel very on the nose. It does feel very campy. But truthfully, it was either you go full camp mode the way they did, or you go the direction I said where it's this inevitable tragic conclusion where we know she's right, but everyone is against her and she takes her own life, even though she is obsessed with not taking her own life. The reason I like this episode is, in my opinion, when it switches to being really campy, when it switches to being really fun, it doesn't betray the rest of the episode. I could have gladly watched a 2.5 hour movie of her losing her mind, us being with her and us being the only ones with her. And I just thought it was such a good, you know, those movies where like someone is convinced of something, but everyone sees them as crazy. And after a while, you start being really frustrated with people. You're like, why don't you just listen to her? All right, why don't you just listen to her? I'm thinking kind of like the Smile movies, for example. But in this, it was like that, but actually really well done. I found it way more horrifying. I was sitting there being like, no, she did send that in the email. No, that name was the thing. Like, it was freaking me out. What would you do in that situation? And truthfully, my favorite section of this show was that middle chunk. And simultaneously, I also thought it was interesting because our main character was nasty. I'm not going to say she deserves literally like dying or going nuts, but I think she deserved to be fucked with a bit, all right? And hear me out on this one. This is not just she was a bit mean to a girl in high school and therefore, we grow up and whatever. I've been mean to kids to high school. We've all done it. We've all said something mean that now as adults we go, oh shit, that was a bit shitty of me. The difference is our main character was not doing that. Like, she was still, like, Verity comes in, and yes, Verity is a bit psycho and prepping to ruin this woman's existence. But even before she'd done anything bad, our main character was like, she's weird. I didn't like her. I don't know. I think we need to be weird about her. She was bringing that high school bully mentality into the show. And I think Verity knew that she would do that. I think that's what's so interesting. I just feel like I had such a good idea of who these characters were. Even the fight between our main character and her boyfriend was so telling. And you could tell that this is a core part of her being and her personality. Being a bit narcissistic, thinking the world revolves around her. And that's what I find so interesting about the ending is, yes, it's technically like a kind of happy, like our main character survived what this person that had become evil was doing. I have empathy for Verity a bit because she was bullied, but like, no, she is torturing these people and making them self-delete. So yeah, she is clearly the villain of the piece. But in saying that, when our main character gets the power, imagine what she's going to be like. Are you serious? Like, it's not a happy ending at all. Because to me, what it felt like was Verity used to be a sweet person, was horrifically bullied and also super smart. And that put her on her path to making this awful technology and using it not for good, but to like torture these people that were mean to her. But our main character was flat out just like cruising at a nasty altitude throughout the episode. So yes, I felt bad for what she was going through, but the fact that she has this unlimited power, what do you think she's going to do? It's going to be fucking terrible. Anyways, all in all, I just thought it was a great episode. I had a great idea of who these characters were. I simultaneously felt empathy for both our leads, both Verity and our main characters, and also looked at them with disgust at multiple points. This is an example of an episode that doesn't really feel like a massive warning about technology. This isn't like deep Black Mirror where it's like, this is a powerful thing that we're going to talk about. No, not at all. This was just a banger sci-fi episode. And truthfully, I could have had that middle chunk, just her being convinced of something and watching how it unfolds in real time when she realizes that somehow she's being gaslit by seemingly the universe. I could have had like a whole 2.5 hour movie of that. I would have preferred personally if the ending was this one where she just inevitably fulfills the cycle, kind of like how those Smile movies go. But in saying that, the ending we go up was so much fun that I just really can't be mad at it. Hey guys, before I get into the rest of the video, the rest of the list, I just want to let you know I offer memberships and Patreon to this channel. They're both the same. And for a small cost a month, you get to decide what I cover as a weekly show on this channel. You also get access to a podcast where I talk about everything I've watched in a month, both shows and movies. On top of that, if you pick the top tier, you get to vote. And currently, if you vote, you are pretty much the deciding vote of a member voted video for the main channel. So you get to vote for a once a month video that will be on the main channel, voted for by members. If any of this sounds interesting to you, there are 2 tiers. One is very cheap and you get access to all my member only videos. The other one, you get the power to decide a main channel video. Please consider getting a membership as it really helps out the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and back to the video. We have USS Callister. Woo, baby. Now it's USS Callister into infinity. And this is pretty much tied for first place. It is technically third. The only reason, if I had to, like, gun in my head, rank these top 3 episodes, the only reason it is here and not at the number 1 spot is because I thought the initial 15-20 minutes of the space adventures were just a little slightly draggy, in my opinion. I know we need to catch up with these characters again. We need to get a feel for them. But truthfully, I just thought once the journalist showed up and was kind of figuring out that like what Jesse Plemons' character had been up to, what the evil guy from the first one had been up to, and what he'd done was really fascinating. And I just loved the way this episode went. I thought it was so fascinating. So first off, the big thing here is there are a lot of parallels to Severance. Now, Charlie Brooker says he hasn't seen Severance, and I don't think this is a one-to-one copy of Severance, but we start having things that remind you a fair bit of Severance. And I think what is funny is when I first was watching Severance, I was like, oh, this is reminding me a bit, not exactly, but a bit of that USS Callister episode. And now I'm watching USS Callister Part 2 being like, oh, this is reminding me of the Severance finale. But yeah, this thing of this person in the real world that has autonomy and this person in the game world that has autonomy, and they both want to exist and try and communicate to each other, was so exciting. It was the only direction you possibly could have taken this. And I truthfully thought that no Black Mirror episodes ever really needed a sequel, but this one makes sense. You know, if you're going to give one a sequel, this one for sure makes sense. So, because, you know, the last episode ends on a high note, right? But it's also like, what are they going to do now? Like, they're just in a video game. And it's interesting, right? Because they technically seemingly can't live in the real world. So what's the alternative here? Like, what are they going to do? Really interesting stuff. I love the direction this episode goes. First off, Jesse Plemons coming back as the main guy. I'm forgetting his character's name. I'm so sorry, but it's obviously the guy that made the game, all right? This is a photo of him. Jesse Plemons' character, the guy that made the game, all right? The evil guy from part one. He comes back, and not in a way that felt contrived or stupid. Like, yes, obviously, you can feel that the writers are like, we need him back. How are we going to get him back somehow? But the backstory they gave him was so interesting. So you find out in this episode that there is a version of Jesse Plemons' character from the first one that was was created by using that cloning technology that he then abused, and is locked inside the game. So the kind of big game engine thing that is there, that is generating all these worlds, inside it is this recreation of this guy's house, and he is stuck in this purgatory forever. And it's just so interesting that our main cast of characters on the USS Callister that are trying to escape are there because they feel like they're forced in a purgatory by his outside version, by his real world version. But then he is also, his inside version is stuck there in a purgatory himself. So when Nanette Cole, our main character, confronts Robert Daly, that was his name, by the way, when she confronts Robert and is asking him a favor, right? There was actual tension there. The backstory was incredible. And I was sitting there was just so many moving pieces going on. I'm like, I hope they don't fuck this up. And I found it so interesting. I was sitting there being like, was he created? You know, did he work in this company, like his outside version, and slowly lose his lust for life, become nastier and meaner and colder and crueler, and then, you know, made this reality to take out his frustration of the day on these clones of his work people? Or was he always like this? And that's the big question of the final chunk of this episode is he inherently a bad person, or is he actually a good guy that just went a little nuts? And so you're watching this version of him that hadn't been corrupted by what his company became, what his game became, but simultaneously has been in this purgatory state forever and probably has some resentment building up himself. It's so fascinating. And Jesse Plemons, by the way, is a great actor, all right? He won the not the Golden Globe, sorry. He's been nominated for Golden Globes and Oscars, but he won the Palme d'Or, not the Palme d'Or, he won the Cannes Film Festival Award for Best Actor for Kinds of Kindness. This guy's on a roll, basically, is what I'm saying. He's been nominated for Golden Globes, Oscars, stuff at the Cannes Film Festival. And he comes back and delivers just an astounding performance in this Black Mirror episode. I thought it was excellent, and I thought the back and forth they're having where she needs a favor from him, so she has to indulge him in his USS Callister trivia and kind of be like, yeah, or Space Fleet trivia, sorry, and be like, yeah, no, it's exactly like that. I love when he gives her two options, she passes the moral test, so he offers a third, and then we get something that should have felt like Deus Ex Machina or convenient writing, but somehow it kind of worked because this guy's been locked here. Of course, he's a genius. So he sees that her outside version is in a coma and basically says she's brain dead. She's, you know, basically as good as dead. But what I can do, because like her brain's left the building, but what I can do is I can put your consciousness in her body along with everyone else, I think. I don't know if something went wrong, if that was always the intention, but he basically says, I can put you and your fleet in her. And all I ask is that this version of you, I can keep this version of you here, and we get to hang out in purgatory forever. And like on one end, it's hard because he's seen there, he's like, I've been lonely for so long. Like this is a terrible existence for me. And you're like, I kind of get it. And she starts going like, no, this power will always corrupt you. Like you'll always, I don't know if I can be there with you because you will always become evil. He starts doing the whole nice guy thing. Comes a pretty good commentary on nice guys. But I just thought the writing here was incredible because you got everyone's position. You simultaneously got why he was a bit desperate and a bit dark, and that almost felt like a fair trade. Like, I'll create a clone of you that then gets to inhabit this person, but I also need a version for me. I want someone to talk to. And you're like, fuck. but also you can't take that by force. And you very quickly see him start force chokeholding her and trying to remove her mouth again. And he quickly turns very, very evil. She kills the version of him. She goes through the thing, jams the floppy disk in. And then you're introduced to yet another really fascinating scientific concept, or sci-fi concept, sorry, where now you're watching the USS Callister live through her brain. Like what her eyes see are now the screen they see. So she's got literally people in her head, but she also gets to live as her own person. She just knows there are people in there watching and talking to her. It's just, it almost sounds like too much, because you have this infinite purgatory version of Jesse Plemons, someone who is dead on the outside, just so much stuff going on. Like this episode asks so much of you, but somehow I thought it was written well enough and delivered it all well enough that it somehow worked. It all worked. And I was sitting there, I literally turned to my fiance at one point and was like, if you tried to explain the plot to someone, like everything that's going on at this point, when the conversation between Robert Daly and Nanette Cole was going on, like if you tried to explain this to someone with no context, they'd be like, sorry, what? And then on top of that, you add the end stuff where they're living inside her brain. It's unhinged, but it feels like unfiltered creativity. And this is the best, in my opinion, this is the best example of what kind of the Americanized version of Black Mirror can be. Bunch of ideas, bigger budget, glossy presentation, kind of following American storytelling devices, but in just a really good way. I thought that was fucking awesome. And like, truthfully, as a 4-year wait sequel that we didn't know we were getting, neat, really neat, really, really neat. All right, so now we are dipping in quality slightly, or a bit. Next, and this is going to be my hottest take of the episode. So now we are up to episode 4. This is ranked number 4 out of 6. But technically it's only like ranked number 2, because I kind of see the top 3 as like 1. We have Plaything. Hear me out on this one. Hear me out on this one. I know this is a lot of people's least favorite. I just thought this felt like Train Spotting, but for Black Mirror. I thought the presentation of it was sick. I normally really struggle with drug sequences in shows. I find if they're not visually communicated well, they just feel really boring, and you're kind of like, all right, I get it, he's high. I thought the dream sequences where he was on the train and seeing the faces morph was good. I just thought this was a banger story. The setup here is like this old dude goes and tries, like, steals alcohol, then gets caught, and then is linked back to a murder, a body found in a briefcase, and then he starts telling the story of why he murdered this guy. And the reason he murdered this guy is because he essentially had like a game given to him by Will Poulter, by the way. Great cameo, great surprise. Another great actor who is like crushing it lately in a bunch of A24 movies, getting a bunch of awards recognition, shows up again. Great to see, but he shows up and gives him this demo of this game where it's actual artificial intelligence. There is no game. You're raising the throng, all right? You're raising this group of like little Tamagotchi things that start talking to you. They start developing a language and trying to talk to you. And this guy starts taking LSD to communicate back with them. And what's interesting is for a while, you're like, up in the air, you're like, is he actually talking to them? Is he not? I love the payoff that like dead ass he is. These are things with feelings, and you start to feel the connection. You get the desperation. I thought the flashback sequences built the relationship that he was having with the throng really quickly. I thought the technology was cool. I thought the presentation was cool. I love the montage of all the technology he was getting to keep the throng alive, because it's built off this like one old shitty computer. So as he doesn't ever want to unplug the computer, so he starts getting chips from iPhones and PlayStations, beefing up this computer in this massive room just to keep the throng alive. And I thought the payoff was good. Hot take, the throng figure out a frequency or a way to kind of like wipe out people. And so the plan all along, the big twist here is that essentially he wanted to get arrested so he could get into seemingly government communication systems or FBI or police communication systems and get on the emergency broadcast system and have the throng emit this tone that basically kills people or takes them over, one or the other. But the ending here is basically just like, whoa, the throng are growing and took over the world. And you know, the thing is, this was a 45-minute episode that, in my opinion, moved like a bullet. The presentation was frenetic and exciting and felt, again, like Danny Boyle Train Spotting mixed with 28 Days Later. I thought it had this punk rock indie film energy to it. and it didn't take itself too seriously, and it just fucking moved. And so as a result, I wasn't annoyed by the ending. I just thought it was cool. I was like, that's the only way that could go. It was a cool payoff. I'm glad that he was right. And truthfully, all I want more from in this episode was more time in the throng. I would have loved to see how they talk, what they feel. I love the moment where the reason he killed the guy was because the guy went and played the game like a game and just started killing the throng. And like watching our main character try and rebuild the trust with the throng. Also the idea that the throng, yeah, like that was an awesome episode. I'm sorry, I disagree, everyone. When it zoomed into the webcam and the throng were obviously watching him murder a guy, and it's like, are they going to trust him? Are they going to see him as the great protector or not? Also, can I just say, I'm going to be very proud for pointing this out in case no one else has thought of it. Is this whole episode not exactly like, and I am very curious as to whether he's seen it, Charlie Brooker, is this not exactly like that Simpsons episode where I think Lisa loses a tooth? It's a Treehouse of Horror episode. She loses a tooth and she puts it in like a little cup or something. I don't know. I forget, but basically she grows a colony of people that live in this little like thing she's made. Right? And a civilization of bacteria grows and sees Lisa as the leader, and Bart starts fucking with them, and Lisa starts beating up Bart, and they see her as the leader again, and then she gets zapped down into there. It wasn't not awfully similar. Regardless, it felt like a really cool take on that story. I thought it was cool. I think it was a tooth. I'm struggling to remember. But regardless, there was that thing she built with bacteria, and a civilization builds, and they watch like gods as Lisa and Bart fight. Yeah, it was great. It was a real good, just tight banger of an episode. Again, it doesn't really, this is an episode of Black Mirror that I like, similar to Shut Up and Dance, but it's not really saying too much about society, but not in a bad way. I would much prefer an episode that is just trying to be a cool science fiction story and doesn't have much to say than an episode like Archangel, for example, where it's like trying to say something about censorship and parental control, but doesn't really come together. Or Smithereens. I love Smithereens for the first 40 minutes, but at the end of Smithereens, that hostage one in season 5, the messaging being like, oh, I maybe could have saved my wife from a car crash, maybe if I wasn't checking a notification, even though the other driver was still technically at fault. So therefore, that's like, it just doesn't come together as well. So I think when the show decides to forego a message just for a cool science fiction story, if they pull that off well, it's sick. And I thought Plaything was just a good example of a pretty tight movie. Now we're getting into seedy, controversial hot take territory. My bottom 2 episodes, which by the way are still like a 7 or 6 out of 10, I guess tied. I'm kind of struggling to decide between them. No, I think Eulogy is second last. And then obviously last is Hotel Reverie. So let me explain. Eulogy is solid. I still give Eulogy a 7 out of 10. This is a good episode of Black Mirror. I just think it could have been better. Now, I talked earlier about sometimes in Black Mirror, you need the technology to get out of the way. So in Bete Noir, I'm so sorry for the pronunciation. I keep forgetting. I tried to drill it in and I just keep forgetting. But in the second episode of the season, right, that one where she has the necklace where she can control people, they explain it very quickly. If you want to care, you can. But ideally, like, you just kind of go, okay, I get it, and the concept's cool. It's like The Substance. You know, The Substance sets up some technology about you can clone yourself. You're not really meant to be seen there being like, oh, why can she, like, have a massive, you know, hole in her spine and be fine? You just go, okay, I guess there's a healing element in the substance. It doesn't matter. You know, you get the story they're trying to tell, and you go on the ride. There are a couple of issues I have with Eulogy that relate to the technology, and Hotel Reverie both have issues that relate to the technology where it is kind of really, the story is really focused on the technology, and the emotions, in my opinion, suffer because of these like hang-ups I have around the episode. So let's just get into Eulogy. My big issue, hot take everyone, is I don't know about you guys, if I propose to someone, even if I hated them, in fact, hate is a very strong emotion. Some believe it is a stronger emotion than love. I am struggling to buy that he cannot remember her face. I know, I don't know. Guys, I'm so sorry. Like, I was struggling the whole episode because I was like, I get that he's cut her face out of all the photos. I get that he's blinded with range. I get that maybe what emotionally they're going for is because he forgave her in his soul at the end, he could see her face. I get that's what they're trying to communicate. But sorry, guys. Like, what would have worked better, in my opinion, was the idea that he's going through and trying to remember what she looks like, and the version that he saw of her had really nasty looking, very angular features. Like, it was kind of like a morph, maybe like Smile. You know, why am I talking about Smile so much this episode? But you know how in Smile it's real people, but they have a very sinister smile, or even Truth or Dare, where it looks like a filter. If it looked like she had like a negative filter, and the AI that was trying to like create these memories with him and remember what she looked like was like, oh, it sort of looks like her, but not quite. Like, that's not really in line with what we see of her. And then the whole episode was him learning to forgive her, and her face slowly morphed from demonic and angular and really off-putting to what, you know, this warm, beautiful person should look like. I think that's perfectly fine. Guys, I'm really sorry. Like, I was really struggling to believe that he does not remember her face, even like vaguely at all, but remembers all these other details. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. Like, but that's not the only issue. All right. So even if you're not going to ride with me on that one, and I do kind of stand by it, like, I remember people from primary school that I had a crush on. I remember what they look like. All right. And it's been 20 years. I'm just struggling. And I was initially buying the premise, by the way. When it was just some random that he flirted with, I was like, sure. And I love the visualization of the scribbles and stuff. But when it became revealed that it was this 15-year trauma he's had, and he never was able to get over her, and, you know, he cheated on her, and like hates her, and like was going to propose to her, I'm like, no, there is no way you don't. I'm so sorry. And he remembers what people were saying, and remembers things that, nah, nope. It wouldn't, like, why not just communicate that he has a really distorted view of her, which is basically, I will grant, is what the episode's going for. But I don't know, like, call me like a nitpicky bastard, but I was really struggling to get past that. But that's not what killed the episode for me. I think the big thing here is, I get that on one end, I think a lot of people are thinking like, a lot of people that really love this episode are probably going, I had the one that got away, or I had the relationship that I fucked up a bit and I wish we had another go round. My big thing with the ending here is it goes for this really emotional, like, kind of earnest moment, this sentimentality, this sentimental tone. I think it was going for, it was meant to be like, oh, how sweet, he remembers her face and her cello playing, and it's meant to be this like warm moment. And it didn't land for me. It didn't land for me because, based on what we'd heard from both parties about this relationship, I don't think it works. I truthfully just do not agree. I think what this episode should have been is that it is someone realizing what a colossal piece of shit they were. They're going through memories. They've had some growth. They've had some separation. They're going through memories, and they're like, God, I was angry, and I remember why I was angry. I can't believe I put her through this. I can't believe that's me. I can't believe that's how I was. But the whole episode, he's kind of like really riding the line of like, this is what she deserved, and she was a bitch here. And he's an ugly character. He's an angry, bitter, ugly, like, not bad looking, but like just a really nasty guy. All right. And I really liked the way that, because the AI that was guiding him through this was kind of triggering him a bit, like he could obviously, he didn't know it yet, but he saw a bit of that woman he didn't like in her, and they were arguing in a way that felt like loaded and personally, like there was weight behind it. But I think my thing here is the ending is going for this thing of like, oh, miscommunication and what could have been, and if he just read the note, and I just can't buy it. All right. So and the reason I can't buy it is because he cheated on her. She cheated on him. He is shown to be an angry, vindictive, bitter guy that has no emotional control. She leaves, he cheats on her, and then is offended when she doesn't say yes to the proposal. Keep in mind, he doesn't know she's cheated, doesn't know that she has a baby. But even so, I'm saying, even all that removed, let's just say you cheat on someone, and then when they get back, you propose to them, and they need to take a second and can't give you an answer. You don't have the ability to self-reflect and be like, okay, yeah, they probably need some time. They're still getting over the cheating. He goes home and completely demolishes a hotel room in such a way that he misses the letter that was there, and then never reads the letter. Like, yes, is it a bit tragic? But I'm telling you guys, based on what I've seen, if he had read that letter, I don't think they would have had a good relationship. In fact, based on everything I knew of this guy, if he had read the letter, he would have been like, cheating fucking bitch. And she expects me to raise this person's child? Absolutely not. Like, are we serious? Like, based off this guy I knew, I do not think this was a matter of missed opportunity or missed love. I think the only way this episode holds together, in my opinion, is if you're watching it as a guy going through the emotional ringer, realizing how awful he was. I think the moment, like, incredible moment, I will say, when he's trying to get the letter off the floor is great. It's a perfect execution of the technology. It's fantastic. It is so, so good. And it's like this guy that is desperately, you know what, it would have been great if he wants to know whether she forgave him or not, you know, wants to relieve himself of guilt, and he can't do it, and he's forever in this purgatory of like, I want to know what was in the letter. You know what hurt this for me? And you know where the episode fell apart for me? It was the 1-2 punch of expecting me to believe that there could have been, like, this was a tragic story that was cut short due to miscommunication, because I thought they were awful to each other. And 2, the fact that you got to read the letter. Hate it. Hate it. First off, you know why? On a technical level, I cannot buy the fact that he painstakingly, there is not one photo he missed, guys. He went through every single photo he went through and cut out the face painstakingly. And you're telling me somehow going through every single box to find every single photo to cut out the face, he didn't once see it, that note that he hadn't read before? Are you joking? I'm sorry. Like, if he just had the memories pushed away all the way at the back of the attic, fine, you know, and then turns out he hadn't cut them and he just forgot what she looked like, fine. But guys, he had gone through every single photo and cut out every single face, and somehow he misses in the same box the letter. Not buying it. Not buying it. But even if I do buy that, yeah, I can't imagine that, like, yeah, this was a romance that should have been cut short. I don't think they would have repeated the cycle. He would have, you know, even if he said yes in the moment, he would have fucking had disdain for her and cheated on her again. He wasn't a good dude. And I'm trying so hard to move with the episode and have this emotional moment. But in my opinion, where this episode works the best and why I'm not putting it last is, I do think this episode, is a good example of how when someone dies, if you've been mean to them or not ideal to them, like, you do go over and go, fuck, that was rough of me. And I think the process of him going through these memories and realizing how awful he was is horrific. But I don't agree. I don't think this guy deserves our pity. I don't think he deserves our empathy. You know why? Because the only reason he backtracked on any of it, we watched him throughout the entire episode have this vibe, have this really awful tone of like, yeah, well, wouldn't surprise me if she cheated. Yeah, she's just awful. She's fucking da 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 da. Like, this guy had clearly not moved on and was acting like a child. I've had relationships end where I've been really fucked over, but if someone died, I would not be seen there being like, oh yeah, fucking right. Like, I swear I'm not hyping myself up, but this guy had like hatred in his heart. He did not like this person. And the only thing that made him change his mind on her was the fact that she actually didn't abandon him and was willing to maybe give it a second go and have a conversation and set him an ultimatum. I am so sorry. That's self-involved. That's a bit, and I don't think she's perfect either, but I think this idea that he's willing to still hold this level of disdain because of how he feels like he was fucked over after he cheated on her, like, how much does she really owe you, dude? Like, you proposed to her after cheating her, you basically emotionally blackmailed her on the spot, and like, you know, he didn't have any ability to have any empathy or understanding. The fact that he's willing to still, after her death, roast her this entire episode, and then the only thing that means he slightly kind of gives understanding and can now forgive her is because she actually didn't run off from him, not the fact that she has a daughter and a whole other life that was cut short by her death. I don't know, guys. I don't know how anyone, again, if you watch the ending as like, God, it must be awful to be a really mean person and then have that thrown back to you, that's fine. If you guys were moved by this episode and emotionally connected to the episode because it's analyzing how you change in grief and how awful it is to be confronted by how bitter you used to be in a relationship, fine. But I truthfully think the ending was going for like, how nice, he can finally remember her face. How lovely, what a shame that they lost this beautiful relationship that could have been. Not buying it. Not buying it. I don't think the character earned it, and I don't think the story earned it. And the reason I'm annoyed is because I think it had a great premise. I think it had a great setup. I think it had a fantastic performance by Paul Giamatti. But those issues around not reading the letter in the box, not remembering her face, and on top of that, I think the impression I got from Paul Giamatti's character and their awfully toxic relationship as a whole, I just don't think the ending of like, yeah, these lost lovers lands at all. I think it does work, however, and the reason it's not last, the reason this episode does work is because I think, yeah, looking at it as like, oh, you know, putting yourself through the emotional ringer of how shit you used to be or how shit you currently are and how you haven't changed is really emotionally compelling and good. But yeah, did not work for me and I was really disappointed. Next, we have Hotel Reverie. This is another frustrating one. And the big frustration here is you get to the ending, and this is another like love that could have been. It's very much hailing back to San Junipero. I feel so bad too. There was a couple I was talking to on the weekend, a queer couple that were talking about how excited they were for this episode. And I'd watched the season at this point. I was like, fuck, you know, because it's like, I want you to have a great episode and a great time, but I don't think this episode came together all that well. I have a few issues. First off, this is an example of where the technology is getting in the way of the story. There's a lot of problems I have with this. First off, the whole idea is like, we're going to get Issa Rae's character, who, by the way, I love Issa Rae. She's incredible in Insecure. She was great in Barbie. I really, really like her. I thought she was incredibly miscast here. I don't know what she was doing with her performance, but I did not feel any chemistry with her and Emma Corrin's character at all. I thought it was really, really rough, guys. But secondly, I thought the initial setup here, I was trying to turn my brain off and just go with the journey. But it was kind of weird. They're like, oh, don't worry. This isn't like a deep fake. We're not just like replacing the person. Like, this is a full-blown performance. And by the end of the episode, given the demands of what they wanted, being literally that she gives the exact same performance, the exact same timing, the exact, like literally do the exact same thing as this original actor in this old movie, I was like, why not just deep fake her? Especially, and before you go, because it's about artistic integrity. How artistically integrateful, what's the word? How much artistic integrity do you have if you're willing to put an actor in a technology that has the potential to fucking kill them? The reveal here that like, if you don't get this story done in the next 90 minutes because we have people coming, we have other people wanting to use the space, and your brain might turn into mush and you'll be locked there forever, was insane. It was too stupid for me to buy. I'm so sorry. And you could just feel the writers being like, we need more stakes. The love story isn't enough. There needs to be a ticking time clock element. What the fuck are we doing? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, this idea that an actress would sign off or the agency would sign off on this potential thing that if it went wrong, she's just locked in purgatory forever. Really? But also, secondly, it was just so transparent that the episode felt like it needed, a time ticking element. So they were like, quick, it's like the Matrix. If you die in there, if you don't get this done, you're basically trapped. Dumb. But the biggest sin of this episode, besides all these cutaways to the really on the nose, obnoxious, over-explanatory tech people, the biggest thing was, why the fuck did we montage through the actual relationship? Get rid of all the stuff with the tech crew and give it to Issa Rae and Emma Corrin. Maybe the reason I think Issa Rae's performance didn't land is because I didn't feel any chemistry. Why the fuck? It was like my big issue with this episode is it's such a great idea. You transport into a movie and the actors don't know they're actors. They are the characters in the movies. They know what the character would have known. And you fall in love with a character while trapped in a movie, and then you get trapped and everything pauses. And now you have a love story while the whole world is paused. What an incredible idea. Like, you're probably, if you haven't seen this episode, you're probably sitting there like, wow, that sounds incredible. I thought it sounded incredible. I was sitting there the whole episode being like, please fix this. Why on earth did we montage through their love story? What, like, I don't care. Make the episode 2 hours then. Why didn't we get the love story? Because the whole weight of the end of this episode is their love story, is the fact that they could have been something and she had to leave and finish the story because everything went wrong. And yeah, it just doesn't land at all. And the ending is so powerful where she can make the phone call. I was slightly confused. I'm like, technically she's calling the actress in that moment, But regardless, I think I do concede that I guess they fell in love in that way where the actress realized she was an actress in a play. Whatever. It's fine. All right. Like emotionally it works. All right. I'm willing to not be nitpicky and go, okay, like this version she's calling, she can fall in love with again, regardless. All right. Very sweet, very good, very great ending. But the journey there was ridiculous. And by the way, guys, it just needed a rewrite. In my opinion, it was a great idea and a pretty good episode. It was like a 6 out of 10, but it could have been a 10 out of 10 with like a bunch of rewrites. What are we doing? The idea that this expensive, rich Hollywood studio, Hollywood production is willing to like there is a ticking time clock element that might actually turn someone into a vegetable, put them in a vegetative state. The idea that that exists because they're too scared to tell the people that have booked the space, hey, we literally have a famous actress that might actually be in severe peril if you guys kick us out. Here's $100,000. We're so sorry. Book the room for another time. Are you fucking like, guys, I'm sorry. I couldn't take any of this episode seriously because I was just scratching my head the entire time being like, what are we doing? Like, just give it a rewrite because this could have been a great episode, a great lesbian romance about love lost, but like all of it combined with the weird technology. Also, who would watch this movie? I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Like, no. All right. Let's give an example. Let's say you decided to take Citizen Kane and like our generation doesn't really watch Citizen Kane. And you're like, oh, we need new movies. The best idea we have is we re-release Citizen Kane and we're not going to change any of the other cast, any of the presentation, any of the dialogue, any of the music. We'll make it widescreen and we're going to put James Corden as the guy. We're going to put James Corden as the main guy in Citizen Kane. I reckon that'll like fill out. Like, I don't get it. Is it really worth risking Issa Rae's life? It's just, I'm so sorry. It just felt like they were making it up as they went along. It was dumb and silly, and I didn't get the difference. Like, I actually didn't get the difference between just Kane AI at that point. Also, they don't even, you know what I would have got is if they allowed some story changes. You could get in the world with the original actors and give a different ending, give a different story, do all this different stuff. But the producers, the studio are like, oh my God, the narrative arc is going off course. Things are going to explode. And if they don't get this done to the exact degree, she's going to be turned into a mush. It was ridiculous. It was just so clunky. And the only reason I'm coming off frustrated and heated is because I think at the end, I was like tearing up. It still landed for me. And I was like, can you imagine if I could like defend this episode? But the issue is I teared up a little and then kind of like cloudy, like a chance of meatballs, sucked up the tear and was like, actually, no, that's emotionally manipulative. Same with the ending of Eulogy. I don't think that ending, the emotional punch they were going for, was earned. Anyways, I sound really negative. Eulogy was a 7 out of 10. This was like a 6 to a 7. And the other ones were like 9 or 10s. All right. It's a really good season of Black Mirror. The only reason I'm frustrated and worked up is because I thought the last 2 episodes that I've mentioned, Eulogy and Hotel Verity. Is it Hotel Verity? Yes. What is it? Hotel Reverie. I'm so sorry. I thought those last 2 episodes could have been as good as the other episodes, just with a few rewrites. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I hope I didn't get too heated. Please like, subscribe, and comment to the channel. I really appreciate it, and it helps me out.